In the previous part of this video, I discussed how Shadow 6 could be a manifestation of 6's dark side. But while editing that video, I came up with a whole other set of theories based on one thing. In today's video, I'm going to offer some alternative theories to what Shadow 6 could be. But as I've said, this is part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, I will leave a link in the description below. It's not required, but I would recommend that you watch that one first or after this one. But before we get into today's video, I have some shoutouts to do. So when I launched the Patreon a couple of weeks ago, I did promise everybody who signed up during that launch window would get a shout out, and that's what we're about to do. I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who signed up during the launch period, because Patreon is really helpful. It helps the creator out an absolute ton, and it kind of just takes away a little bit of the stress of YouTube ad revenue, which can be very up and down. So I really do appreciate it. It is helping me continue to create content. I'm not going to be plugging my Patreon at the beginning of every video, don't worry. I'll be talking about it occasionally, and I'll probably be putting Patreon things towards the end of the video. But just while we launched it, it was there. So a massive thank you to Telly, Double Dave 33, Surin, Sinead Forvague. I'm so sorry if I said that incorrectly. Mario Jinsu and Lauren Ann. Thank you so much to everybody who signed up during the launch window. We also had a few people sign up to the coffee tier as well, which is the £1 a month tier. So I really appreciate everybody who signed up. It really does help out the channel. It's directly helping me continue to make content for you guys. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. So in the previous video, I discussed how Shadow 6 could be a manifestation of 6's dark side. It seems like Shadow 6 has an agenda, and while it is possible that Shadow 6 is a part of 6's soul, it does seem that the two act independently, and Shadow 6 seems to have a plan for 6, some reason why she pointed her towards them more. But as I was editing that video, I started to think about one thing, and that is, Shadow 6 is made out of signal. This is something I noticed particularly when we see Shadow 6 playing on the train tracks while Mono is making his way to the signal tower. You can clearly see that 6 ripples, and she seems to be made out of TV signal, very similar to Mono when he starts to interact with the television. This got me thinking about a whole different set of theories that all intertwine together, but I decided to put them in a separate video rather than tack them on the end of the last one. So what's going on here? If Shadow 6 is made out of signal, that could make sense, as she seems to be spawned when the Thin Man kidnaps 6 and takes her to the signal tower. We don't quite know how the signal tower works, or how the Thin Man works, or how Mono works. Knowing that Mono grows up to be the Thin Man, everything seems to be a little bit off. That makes it very difficult to explain the theories today, but I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to highlight a couple of different theories here that could be true. So my first theory is that Shadow 6 isn't a part of 6 at all. Shadow 6 is a part of Mono. Yes, it seems like Shadow 6 is a clone or a part of 6, since she looks exactly like her. But look when she appears. She appears when the Thin Man kidnaps 6 and takes her to the signal tower. As I've said in previous theories, I truly believe that Mono's biggest fear is being alone. His name is Mono, and at the end of the game, he is trapped alone in the signal tower, which seems to transform him into a monster. I personally think that this all ties back to the idea that Mono is desperate to not be alone. That's why he seeks out 6 in the first place. Essentially, he wants a friend, and he does try to rescue 6 several times throughout Little Nightmares 2. But when 6 betrays him, he becomes dark and bitter and angry at the world, and this manifests into the Thin Man. So when 6 is kidnapped, it's possible that Shadow 6 is Mono imagining or manifesting 6, literally because he doesn't want to be alone. Just like in part 1, it's possible that these are emotions that are manifesting. Mono misses 6, he wishes she was still there, and so that manifests into a shadowy version that follows him around. Notice how she looks at Mono and disappears, and she reappears once Mono has a crash. Mono crashes in this train, and it's for a few minutes after this that he can see Shadow 6 again. Why is this? Did the bump in the head just make him imagine her, or is she only here right now because again, he's in a dark place? It's very interesting that Shadow 6 appears right before Mono faces the Thin Man, or, well, his future self, or his past self, or... We'll come on to that, because I have some theories about that too. It does seem that Shadow 6 wants these children to confront monsters. It seems like she's pushing Mono to confront himself, and it seems like she's pushing 6 to confront the lady, which again, I don't think 6 grows up to be the lady, but it does seem like the lady is 6's nemesis in a way. Also notice how after both Mono and 6 confront their biggest demon, they both gain a bunch of power. Before, Mono needed to go through televisions to get from place to place. But after he confronts the Thin Man, he now has the ability to teleport straight to the signal tower. He used to have to use the televisions to get around, and now he has way more power. He has the power to get there instantly without the use of a television. Same with Six. Six doesn't have any powers that we know of, but once she faces the lady and kills her, she suddenly has all of these powers. So why is Shadow 6 pushing these children towards gaining power? It's entirely possible that Shadow 6 is not a part of Mono nor Six, and in fact Shadow 6 is an entirely different entity that is pushing these children towards becoming monsters. But it is also possible that Mono manifested Shadow 6. We know that he has the power of the signal, and we know that Shadow 6 is made of signal. So it's not out of the realms of possibility that Mono manifested her, like I said earlier. But it's also entirely possible that Shadow 6 is still being manifested because Mono is still alive in the signal tower even after 6 leaves. We don't know how long exactly it takes for Mono to grow up into the Thin Man. It could be minutes or it could be years. But either way, he's still alive. He's still there, and we know this because at the end of Little Nightmares 1 DLC, we see the Thin Man in the TV on the moor. So if he's still around, his power is too, and it's entirely possible that he is still manifesting Shadow 6 while 6 is carrying on throughout the moor. Why? Well, possibly because Mono is still very bitter and angry, and that is manifesting in the Shadow 6 version. This Shadow 6 which is pushing 6 towards these dangerous actions. Again, Mono's emotion is very dark, and so his manifested version of 6 is very dark too. It's very interesting to think about that 6 might still have a manifestation of Mono following her around, she just doesn't realize it. In a way, Mono never left. So yes, perhaps Mono is pushing 6 towards these dangerous situations, perhaps he's still very angry with her, perhaps this is an accidental manifestation and something that he doesn't control. But I have another theory too, and that is, well, it's possible that Shadow 6 doesn't come from this dimension whatsoever. To delve into this one, we have to look at the signal tower a little bit more closely. As I've said in previous videos, physics in the signal tower don't work properly. The signal tower is based on the impossible staircase. We know that gravity and relativity don't seem to work properly in the signal tower. For example, we can see these objects floating around almost like they're underwater or in space. Again, gravity isn't working here properly. We also see these doorways that lead into themselves, which, again, on the laws of physics doesn't make sense. There was a very clear nod from the developers that physics in the signal tower have broken completely. And it's entirely possible that's because the signal tower is corrupting everything around it, including the laws of physics itself. Why is this relevant? Well, think about that. Think about physics and science fiction. If you've watched any sort of science fiction in the last 10 years, you may have come across the idea of a multiverse, especially if you've watched things like Marvel. Marvel's very big on this at the moment. The idea of a multiverse is that there are many different universes laid on top of each other, or not necessarily on top of each other, but all clustered around each other. The most popular theory is that every time there is a decision to be made by anybody or anything, a different branching path is produced. For example, there is another universe out there where you decided not to watch this YouTube video today, in which case you are clearly much less entertained than your version. I joke, but the idea that there are infinite different yous based on every single decision that you've ever made or every single decision that anybody else has ever made is very popular in science, and it's not actually outside of the realms of possibility, even though it's just a theory. So what's this got to do with Shadow 6? Well, if we think about it, we can see Shadow 6 appears when the Thin Man kidnaps 6. What if Shadow 6 is 6 from a different dimension or a different universe? One in which the Thin Man didn't succeed to kidnap her. Perhaps Mono stopped him, or perhaps the Thin Man took Mono instead. But either way, Shadow 6 could be an echo of somebody from that different universe, and the only reason we can see her is because 6 and Mono got into close proximity of the Thin Man, and we know that the Thin Man has the power of the signal, and we know that the power of the signal has the ability to warp physics. So it's entirely possible that we are seeing a glimpse of 6 from another universe. This 6, for some reason, didn't get taken to the signal tower. This theory opens up so many different possibilities. For example, when Shadow 6 and 6 face off and Shadow 6 looks down towards the moor, perhaps she wasn't gesturing to 6 at all. Perhaps this was just her carrying on with her daily business. Think about this as well. Shadow 6 is looking towards the television. If this was a 6 that didn't get taken to the signal tower, and as I said, maybe Mono did, maybe she came to rescue Mono, and maybe she decided not to, and she decided to go to the moor instead. Maybe 6 is following her, not realizing that that is her from another dimension. Maybe this Shadow 6 gets glimpses of R6 as well, and maybe that's why she watches 6 when she eats in Little Nightmares 1, because she's just confused. She sees this dark version of herself feasting on things and she's a little bit confused by it. I know this theory is very out there, but there must be some reason why the developers went so hard into the idea of the physics in the signal tower. Even though the signal tower was only in the game for a tiny amount compared to the rest of the areas, there was a clear design choice here, and physics were at play. We've also talked previously about the timeline not making sense. Many people believe Little Nightmares 2 is stuck in a time loop, and it might well be, but as I've said previously, it seems to be much more like a broken timeline. It's wibbly wobbly timey wimey. It doesn't make sense. Time isn't in a linear fashion in the Pale City anymore because physics don't work, and time is a product of physics. So if gravity is broken, it's entirely possible that time is broken too. The reason why Mono and the Thin Man can exist in the same time together is because, again, the timeline has been broken. It's been broken by the Thin Man and the Signal, possibly again broken because the Thin Man is so bitter and angry, and again, all of this could be 6's fault. It's entirely possible that the only reason we can see these glimpses of Shadow 6 is because of the Signal. If she is made out of Signal, then that means she either was created by Mono and the Thin Man, or we are seeing her from another universe because of Mono and the Thin Man. None of this points towards Shadow 6 being a part of 6, because again, 6 isn't made out of Signal. Mono is, or Mono seems to be, but 6 isn't. So why would a part of 6 be created from the Signal? It also ties into the glitching remains as well. These could be glimpses and echoes of children from other universes. Think about it, the reason why the glitching remains are glitching is because in one universe they got kidnapped by the Thin Man, but in a different universe they didn't. Think about the girl with the bloody nose in the comics as well. She is scratching marks on the wall with her spoons, and then she digs through into the next room, and when she gets through there, to her horror, she sees a whole room full of scratch marks, which appear to have been made by her. But she's very shocked to see them, like she's never been in this other room before. What if these two universes are colliding onto each other? In one universe you had the Spoon Girl in this room, and in another universe you had her in a different room. Again, thinking about the theory, every single decision would create a branching path. So the Doctor, or whoever it was that threw her into this room, threw her into one room in one universe and a different one in the other. But because of the Thin Man and the Signal Tower shenanigans, those two universes are bleeding into each other. This could also make so much sense. As I've said previously, it sounds like the chubby kid is still alive in our universe. You can absolutely hear him in the school when the teacher is caning somebody. So it seems like the chubby kid is still alive, but in the comics it looks like he gets caught. Maybe the teacher caught him and she's keeping him as a pet, but maybe the glitching remains that is left was a different version of the kid that got caught. And in our world, he hasn't been caught. Well, he got caught by the teacher in a different way. We really don't know if any of these children are in the same universe as ours, and all the comic book children seem to have these stories that don't really fit with our universe. The only one that does is 6. For example, we see Mono getting chased by a monster, and it looks like Mono got caught. Perhaps that was Mono from a different universe. That Mono got caught and became a glitching remains, but our Mono is still alive. The glitching remains only exist because the two universes are starting to bleed into each other because the Signal Tower has started to corrupt them all together. It's broken the laws of physics, it's broken gravity, it's broken time, and now it's breaking the multiverse. Yes, I know this is an absolutely crazy theory, but it would completely make sense as to why there are two 6s. One who went through a journey with us, and another one who went through a journey we didn't see, but we are seeing glimpses of it, and we are seeing a completely different 6, and the only reason we can see those glimpses is because Mono is still alive, and the Signal Tower corruption never stopped. By dropping Mono, 6 continued the cycle. She didn't break it, and by continuing the cycle, the corruption is continuing. In fact, we don't know if the events of Little Nightmares 2 have started again while 6 is in the mall. If it is a time loop or broken timeline, what's to say that there isn't another version of 6 still trapped in the Pale City? After all, if Mono grows up to be the Thin Man, but then the Thin Man is released by Mono, it has to continue. It has to keep going, and this is where the loop idea comes in. Again, I still think the timeline is broken, but it doesn't mean that both aren't true. It doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a loop going on. just because timeline is broken, and it doesn't mean that there isn't a broken timeline just because it's a loop. To summarize this theory, it's entirely possible that Shadow 6 is just another version of 6, either one from a different timeline, one from a separate timeline, one from a previous loop, however you want to think about it. The idea that Shadow 6 is made out of Signal gives so many more different ways to think about Shadow 6. And it gives us way more possibilities into the universe of Little Nightmares. Again, we don't really know what's going on here. This whole world could just be a nightmare, this could be a normal world that got corrupted, or maybe this is just one version of many different worlds. Maybe there is a very normal version of this world somewhere, and this is just one in the multiverse. But either way, with that idea out there, I hope you guys can start looking at different theories, and maybe we can come up with an idea of what's going on in the entire world of Little Nightmares. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a like, let me know down in the comments below, and consider subscribing if you want similar content like this. If you want to see some of my movie and TV theories, I have started my second channel. You can find it on YouTube. It's called It's Tericho again. I will leave a link down in the description below, or you can go and search for it, but I've already put a Squid Game theory up there, and I will be talking about TVs and movies. I've honestly just wanted to do it for a while. There's certain TV shows and movies that I want to talk about, and they won't really fit on this channel, so I thought why not just do it on a second channel. That's there if you want it. If you don't want it, that is completely fine. This channel won't be changing. It'll be carrying on as normal. Anyway, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.